What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Privacy Stream. I'm Dwight, and I'm here with Chris, and we're excited to talk to you today about the NIST privacy framework. It's 2025. We're getting our privacy in order. It's a great time to look at your personal privacy, look at your company's privacy, and start to assume some of the responsibilities for what we're doing with our own data and other folks' data. So, we're back with NIST. We're NIST fans over here, and we're just going to be talking about this framework. Give you a quick introduction, and just inviting you to take a look at the links right to the NIST website. Get this downloaded. Have a scroll. It is not a giant document, and hopefully it'll be not completely bite sized, but enough enjoyable enough for everyone to not have an issue going through. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think this is great. And more and more companies seem to be adopting this framework, especially as privacy becomes more of a concern, including the regulatory aspect with the state laws and so forth that are coming out. I think it's just going to become more prevalent. And so I think it's extremely important, but also from a learning standpoint, I think it's a really good framework to just go through the controls and see how it's all set up and so forth as well. So this is great not only for industry but also individuals as well, even if you're not directly using this. And my understanding is that this is like a go-to for the privacy industry, right?
I I haven't seen it implemented, I'm still hoping, but I feel like it is a good starter kit for people who are trying to, wrap their minds around where to, where to begin with their privacy programs.
Yeah. Well, at least there's something. So let's go ahead and dig into it. So, like this first part, a foundation for privacy. So one of the big things I like about this is you'll see that there's a lot of like overlap compared to like the NIST CSF 2.0 that you may be familiar with. But so it's voluntary. So like it states on the far right hand side, you see that it's voluntary adoption, which I think is extremely important, especially from a business standpoint. And then it's really laid out as a practical guide, as it states there. So it just kind of gives you a direction and a way to go, a pathway is what it really seems like to me.
With this being an offshoot of our main study GRC Thursdays, talking everything GRC and having so many security folks in the audience, I think that makes it a little bit more palatable for security people who may be coming in and trying to figure out like, wait, how is this related? Um, you know, aren't I doing enough if I'm protecting the CIA of my company? No, not if
Yeah.
you want to protect this privacy stuff too. So, what do they say? Same, but different. And this will help you kind of start to expand on that, develop those goals and really be systematic in your approach to privacy, even if you feel like you're a beginner.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing resource, and anybody is able to go through and start digging through it and get learn something from it as well. One of the other key things I want to note out is so we put this graphic up that came out of the document, which we'll go through some of the controls today, actually, even. But you'll see like the cybersecurity risks on the left hand side here. Those are from the NIST CSF. Now those are outdated now because they did add the govern function. However, it's just designed to show you the overlap between, and you'll see with the functions that are inside of the privacy framework, how they coincide. So the protect dash P for privacy. And so I love how they put these together with the graphics. And let's go ahead and move forward here. So you'll see here the core of the framework itself. Did you want to kind of touch on some of these?
I think we'll hit these as we go through the controls, but yeah, just like all the frameworks, we kind of have that same sort of pattern with the categories and subcategories. And I will give a little bit of a shout out to PBO. Like this will seem like light work to folks that joined us for the going through the recent PII and processing group for NIST 853. But if you heard us in that discussion, and we're really confused, this is the best starting point for you. And we'll also so we'll go through those controls, but we'll also talk about the tiers that take you from, you know, maybe from just starting out to trying to mature that program as you go.
All right, so let's go ahead and just jump straight over to that. So this is the main document. We'll definitely go through and put the links to the main page for the privacy framework, but then also these documents in the description below for you to start digging into. This page right here, so this document's only 9 pages, and this goes over the core controls here. So like just to start out with, we have identify dash P for that privacy aspect. Are there any particular controls here that kind of jump out to you a little bit?
I just similar to security, you wanna know what you're protecting, and so where in security, we're trying to get as many of those assets sort of mapped out, here, we're more concerned about the data itself, and in particular, the data that has personal data in it, and understanding how that personal data flows through your systems, flows through your organization, who are the owners of certain processes, who are the most important folks. If you have an issue, if you have a question, when you're looking at that, you want to be able to know, like, okay, here's who I need to make friends with, here's who I need to go to sort of sort this out, or ask a question to make sure that we're being compliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like it states here, so understanding and managing that privacy risk for individuals. And then they just break it down further. So then you have the function, the category, and the subcategories. And we could pull one of these out here. So like one of the examples for the identify dash P is the purposes for the data actions are inventoried. So why are you doing those actions with the data? And and putting those on a sheet, right? Is that basically what that's stating? Almost like an asset
So
inventory?
anytime we're because we're just talking about purpose, we're trying to make sure that you have a lawful, legitimate reason to deal with people's data, and so by putting those purposes there, then we kind of make sure that we're not hosting data that we're not supposed to, or that maybe we don't have strong reasons to have, because we are coming off this
Yeah.
age where everybody's like, the more data the better, and so and in that we're limiting our liability, and increasing the chances that we can be compliant with all these emerging laws.
Yeah, and I also want to note, so that is taken out of the identify function, but it's part of the category for inventory and mapping, which also talks about, the processing by systems, products, and services. Another good example here, so the next category for the identify section or function is the organization's missions and objectives. So business environment, which this one has a couple different examples here too.
And I think you're
So
going to find that in most frameworks where you have to define, what your leadership looks like, how what maybe your ethics and business mission and things like that are. So I think that yeah, I think that that's pretty common. And we should also point out that with it being voluntary, when you're looking at this, you want to be figuring out, like, okay, well, what are my compliance obligations? What are my business objectives? You're not looking at this like a checklist, like, oh, I need to do everything on here. Even though they might all be best practices, some of them are not going to be feasible, or maybe they just don't apply in your particular context.
yeah, that's a really important thing to throw out there too. It's voluntary and it's not designed to be a checklist and like fully implemented. Um, like they do kind of market it for as a guide, to assist you along the way and give you direction. And you'll see here that there's multiple other categories like risk assessment as well. Potential problematic data actions and associated problems are identified. I highly recommend going through. These are great documents. If you guys have any questions, definitely drop those in the chat. And then also we have the privacy chat on our Discord server as well. So if you guys have any questions or need any assistance with that, or if you guys have some feedback as well. Now, like jumping
We
to the next section here. Yeah, go ahead.
in our in the main call on Thursdays, Chris was recently talking about risk registries and all of that. And so what we see in that last section, one of the big important parts of adopting this type of framework is implementing privacy into your existing risk management practices. So if you already have a risk registry, if you already have meetings where you talk about emerging risk and things that you need to be on the lookout for, if you don't have a privacy team at your organization, or even maybe lawyers that handle this particular thing, it may be important for your GRC folks to have their head on the swivel about emerging privacy risks as well, because you can have everything protected and all your adversaries kept out and still fumble the ball on privacy.
Yeah, exactly. And so moving on to this next section here, so the govern dash P. So right off the bat, we're right into it with the policies, processes, and procedures, which I think is what a lot of people think about when they think about privacy, especially in the GRC realm, is like a privacy policy. That's like typically the number one thing that I hear about. But there's a lot more involved with that as well, and you'll see that throughout these different sub-functions, subcategories.
Yeah, and some of that is simple stuff like who handles privacy at the organization, which is a lot more confusing than you might think. Is it the legal team? Is it the security people? Um, is it do you
Now,
have a compliance function? Do you have a ethics function? Like, yeah, it depends on the size of the company.
now, is this a situation where like one really good way to implement like this control here would be like a RACI matrix or something along those lines? Is that what
Yes,
they're
and
looking
what
for?
what you also see in smaller organizations is you see it becoming more popular to sort of set up a committee. So even though people might have these other job functions, maybe someone is the CIO and not necessarily looking at privacy specifically. Maybe someone is in procurement and maybe they don't deal with privacy issues at all, except when answering questions, from third party organizations. But they come together as a committee and they have give oversight and feedback on things like changes to your privacy policy and things like that. So that could be another possible way that privacy issues are handled, especially with limited resources.
Yeah. And then you were talking about that risk management aspect as well. So we see more of that under this govern function.
Yep, and that's going to be important as well as your awareness and training. I feel like people know about that a little bit more nowadays, but maybe not so much from the privacy standpoint. But if you have ever dealt with HIPAA or GDPR, any of those, you probably realize like these things are, you're gonna have to have some training on these laws as well.
Yeah. They even have awareness and training here, monitoring and review. So some really, really great topics that they have built into it. The next one here is the control dash P. So
For
that's
me,
one that's different than other ones.
yeah, for me, this is probably the most challenging of all of the categories, because
Mhm.
here we get a little bit more technical about what we're actually doing as processors. Here is where we're gonna have to talk to, database administrators, data scientists, or whoever's handling that, maybe even our like DevOps folks, whoever's handling, you know, the the data. This is where this part really starts to come in,
This
where
is
we're
like the
trying to
meat of
track
the
and govern
framework.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like you were saying, that so data processing policies, processes, and procedures. I find it interesting how they put this in its own function. Would you? I mean, it sounds like that's probably because it is like a very important part. So instead of throwing that into the previous policies, processes, and procedures we saw under govern, they wanted to, make the entire control aspect. So to split that up a little bit too, because this really goes more into the how is it actually acted upon, right?
Yeah, it's super foundational, and you're gonna see a growing emphasis on this particular section, especially I think especially for us coming from the security background, where we kind of have a familiarity with some of the other categories, including the last one that's coming up next. But this is the one where when you're looking at this for the first time, you kind of want to focus in on, um, how, like, do I have visibility? Am I, like, if you're looking at that first one, do I have visibility of, like, what's happening with, the data? We talked about the data map, which gives you maybe, like, total system visibility, but here we're talking about a little bit more granularity, like, do the right people have the right access to be able to say, like, "This is what's happening, this is the processing that's happening with this particular data," or this is not what's happening, like, "We do not sell your data, this is," you know, this these we know what's going on, and we know what we're doing and not doing, and that's reflected in, our communication.
Yeah, and I see some really important ones here, just like data are destroyed according to policy. So that seems to like relate to like the GDPR, where you have the right to revoke your data itself, destroy it.
Yes, but also I think it goes back to your, basic obligations for data retention.
Yeah, and then did you want to move to this next one now? So communicate. That's
Communi
another
commu
unfamiliar one.
Yeah, communicate is a big one. It sounds like something that the PR team should be doing, but in privacy, the way that you communicate your privacy is important. If customers can trust you, it adds to your value as an organization. It encourages that you're trustworthy, and yeah, that people can trust their information or their money with you. So being able to
Yeah,
communicate that is important. That can be everything from your privacy policy on your website to how you talk about privacy in person, to where we see
transparency.
organizations even having what they call a trust center on the website to give some transparency into their security and privacy programs.
Yeah, and you see a large focus here on like you said, the PR aspect and public relations and so forth, the transparency. So a lot of these directly relate to that. So it's talking about like data disclosures and sharing are maintained and access for review or transmission. You also see a couple other ones like the roles and responsibilities, i.e., IG public relations for communicating the data processing. So yeah, that's a really important one too. And then we're moving on to like Protect P as well. So
Yeah,
develop and implement appropriate data processing safeguards.
this is
Isn't
the
that what we've been
final
doing the whole time?
yeah, this is the final category, and I feel like maybe the most familiar for security folks. So yeah, some of this will sound familiar. Yeah, we've been protecting it the whole time, but now we're trying to create some synergy between those programs in a similar way than when we talk about the risk management here. We're talking about some core protection things that we're doing that can a lot of times can overlap for both confidentiality and privacy.
Yeah, and there's like shout outs to like backups of information are conducted, maintained, and tested. Protection processes are improved, and so forth. Response plans, recovery plans. So yeah, definitely. I think this would be more familiar for the majority of the group. But again, definitely we'll put the links down in the description itself, and we definitely recommend for you to go through here. So this is only 9 pages in length. Was there anything else you want to add on this function in particular, or this document?
Nope. You just get your questions into Discord. We'll try to dig through them, hopefully address them in a future episode. We're happy to go over this with you, and we want to talk privacy more. Hopefully, we're getting to the meat. So, thanks for everybody giving their feedback and following along.
Yeah, we look forward to your guys' questions in Discord, in the comments below. Throw them in chat. Let us know what you guys want to see coming up as well. We do this every single Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.